Hello and welcome to this tropical weather update. Yeah, we still got a lot going on out here. Um, I'm not too concerned with Lee right now. It's just a tropical depression, barely staying alive. We got to focus on Jose, Hurricane Jose, which is a Category 1 hurricane. That it's starting to transition over to an extratropical cyclone. I'll explain that when we look at the satellite imagery. Uh, and let's go ahead and click this. Let's look at the track of Jose, and you can see it stays offshore. It's not really going to bother us too much. We have a tropical storm watch for effect for Suffolk and a tropical storm warning out for the Cape. So it's going to come close enough to give, I think, the Cape and part of Rhode Island probably some tropical storm conditions. However, for Long Island, I don't think we're going to see tropical storm conditions anywhere on Long Island. Maybe the Twin Forks, but I really don't think we're even going to see it there. Especially looking at these models. When we go ahead and look at the models, you'll see that. So it stays offshore, but it will take this loop, and you can see they have it transitioning over to a extratropical cyclone. All right, so that is the forecast for Jose. However, let's go ahead and now look at Maria. When Maria is now up to a Category 5, Maria has undergone a rapid intensification here, and hurricane warnings in effect for so heartbreaking, and it gets to me, but it is so heartbreaking. The same islands that were hit by Irma are going to get just pummeled again, and Puerto Rico is going to get pummeled. This is going to be a catastrophic hurricane for Puerto Rico. It's going to be a major hurricane when it hits Puerto Rico, and as far as Maria goes, sustained winds are at 160 miles an hour. Yesterday, this thing was like just a Category 1, and it's just exploded so rapidly. And, it's very unusual to have so many Category 4s and Category 5s in one season, which should be ringing the alarm bells with the media and the general public that we have a climate catastrophe on our hands. But unfortunately, they're not doing that because, again, the big oil, fossil fuel industry influences this, and they just don't want to admit the obvious. So this is going to be a catastrophe, and then we've got to watch. After it's done with all these islands in Puerto Rico is going to be devastated by this thing. It's going to also probably affect the Hispaniola Island, Dominican Republic, as well. And then after that, it moves north into the Bahamas. And so next, we're going to look at the satellite imagery of these things. So first, we are going to look at Hurricane Jose. And you can see Jose is looking a lot less like a tropical system and more like a nor'easter. However, you can see there's some intense convection going on. Take a look at these cloud tops. You can see how they reflect on the visible here before it goes into infrared, and you can see how high they are. So there is a lot of convection going on the west side of the storm. Not on the east side, but on the west side of it. And that's kind of interesting that it's on the west side. But again, I think we're starting to see this become more extratropical, the way it's looking. It's looking more like a coastal storm, a very strong coastal storm. But as far as looking like a tropical system, it's really looking less and less like that. However, that convection is very impressive. So just because it's starting to transition does by no means mean that this thing cannot inflict damage if it were to hit land. But fortunately, it looks like it's going to stay offshore when we go and look at the models later. Let's now go over to Maria here. This is Hurricane Maria. Dangerous Category 5 Hurricane Maria, and you can see the eye going over one of the islands right now as we speak. This thing, unlike Jose, which is a mess, and looks like a mess, Maria looks amazing, and it's got that perfect circular look to it. It's got that buzzsaw look to it. You can see the eye very distinctly here, and great outflow. This thing is really just intensifying rapidly, and it's going to stay that way. I don't think it's going to weaken at all crossing this little island. This island here has got to be devastating. Pardon me, I don't know the name of it, but this island right here has got to be devastated. It's going to probably be uninhabitable again. It's just crazy stuff going on. I'm sorry if it sounds like I'm freaking out when I look at this, but it's because I am. I've just never seen this kind of stuff happen in the atmosphere before. So yeah, I've seen severe hurricanes, but never so many in one season. So this is going to head out and hit Puerto Rico, and Puerto Rico is just going to be devastated, devastated. I mean, I think that the whole island will be left without power. Their power grid, their transmission system will probably be destroyed. It's in bad shape as it is. We're going to probably have to take in a lot of climate refugees from Puerto Rico. They are in American territory, so we will probably have to wind up taking in a lot of climate refugees from here, because this island's going to be destroyed. After Category 4, Category 5, I can't remember the last time one of those hit Puerto Rico, like in this particular configuration. Is crazy. We're seeing things that we're watching history here, and this history is most likely our own doing. By putting so much greenhouse gases into the atmosphere and changing the climate of this planet. Obviously, I don't want to talk about it too much in this video. I want to try to make this more of a weather update, but it's obvious people need to be talking about this. What we're seeing in the atmosphere is not normal. This is not normal behavior. This is definitely, we're going into a new type of climate where things are going to be much more intense, and there's going to be many more extremes because of what we're doing to the planet. So let's now go ahead and take a look at the computer models. Okay, these are the computer models, and we're looking at the GFS. And the GFS here, this is the 18Z run. So we're going to take a look and see what it's doing with Jose. So you can see that it's taking Jose more or less offshore, and therefore we will not see much effect. I don't think we're going to see that many effects. It doesn't even give us much rain. I'm trying to look and see how much rain it gives us, and it doesn't even. I don't even think it gives us much rain. We'll have to look at the rainfall totals. I'll have a closer view of what the model is going to do with Jose. So you can see it takes Jose offshore, keeps it offshore. You can see how the East End and especially the Cape Cod area would see the brunt of this, but still the worst of it stays offshore, and it still has this very strong. Probably very strong extratropical cyclone at this point as we go into Wednesday. It's like some kind of hybrid. It's a hybrid, probably you could call it that. So what the GFS does is it kind of, again, it does that loop where it stays offshore, but it loops offshore. You can see that it can't go out to sea because there's a big high over there, over New England there, over northern New England, and it then starts retrograding it down and actually just keeps it stalled out there. And here comes Maria. So Maria comes in off the Bahamas, and Maria is a much scarier storm. It's going to be probably still a Category 4 or maybe even a 5 at this point at this location. And what's going to happen here is it's going to come very close to the Carolinas here, brushing the Outer Banks. But then what's going to happen is it's going to get pulled out to sea by the trough created by Jose. It will get pulled out to sea and spare us, at least according to this computer model run. That is what will happen. However, we want to look at some other computer models, but I want to first go ahead and look at the GFS and a little more in detail. We're going to go and look at a closer region, go into the northeast region here, and we're going to go in a little closer here. Yeah, it's just shaped a little different, so hopefully you can see that and show you what it does here. So I'm going to go in that, and we're going to go into the wind. Well, let's look at the rainfall first. Let's go ahead and see what the total rainfall will be here. Alright, so let's go ahead and look here. I just have it zoomed in on Long Island. Alright, so you'll see what the total rainfall is here. Okay, so we're going to have it zoomed in on Long Island. We're going to see, yep, it's keeping most of the heavy rain off. The only areas that would see an inch or more would probably be the extreme South Fork. And that would be it, according to this. Most of the rain's going to fall over the Cape, according to this particular run. Not much rain for Long Island, or just a little bit of rain. So we may not see as much rain as they're saying tomorrow. A lot of here forecasts of like 3 to 5, 6 inches. I'm not buying that. Not with the output out of this model, and not with what the trend seems to be. So that is the GFS for the rainfall. Let's go ahead and look at the wind. And let's see what happens here with the wind. All right. So, taking it into Tuesday, let's see what happens with the wind here. So, yeah, you can see that the higher winds do seem to affect. I don't, like I said, most of Long Island probably won't even see maybe an occasional gust to a gale force, but most of the tropical storm or gale winds will probably even stay just on the forks. Just on the South Fork in particular would see that. So the South Fork will probably get hit hard. For anywhere from like Southampton on east would probably see the worst conditions with the wind and the rain, according to this model anyway. And as it moves east and out, you can see that the Cape will definitely get affected. The Cape is probably going to have the Cape and these Nantucket, these islands here, probably going to. I think they're already under a tropical storm warning, so I could definitely see that's needed for that area. As far as the South Fork goes, I think even the South Fork might be able to skirt away without a tropical storm warning. But maybe to be on the safe side, they could put a tropical storm warning for the South Fork. But for the rest of us, according to this model, I don't see. You can see the loop that it's taking there, and then it just kind of dodges out there. So that's the wind from the GFS. Let's go ahead now and look at some of the other computer models. Okay, let's take a look at the European model, and I'm in this view because the European model, this is the best way to illustrate with the winds and stuff. So, starting from the current, this is the 12Z run of the Euro, and we'll move it forward here, and here we are Tuesday. The Euro is it's a lot different now. It's a little the Euro has a much bigger wind field, so it's definitely having the stronger winds over the forks. The rest of Long Island won't see anything too terrible, but the stronger winds would definitely be over eastern Suffolk County, which is why a tropical storm warning may be needed for eastern Suffolk, say from Riverhead on east. At least on this model, it has the stronger winds. And what the Euro does, you can see it's going to take Jose offshore, and then it's going to loop it. And you can see what's going to happen here. Here comes Maria. And what Jose is going to do is Maria is going to follow him out. That's what's going to happen. You almost see this is actually a Fujiwara effect. Actually, really strange. It almost looks like Jose gets re-energized there. This is some kind of Fujiwara kind of thing going on here. And it captures it and then takes it out to sea. So, and this is definitely the storm you want to go out to sea. You don't want to see it impacting any more land. So this is what the Euro has for. It's definitely interesting to see the Fujiwara effect here. I've never seen it. I've seen it in the Pacific. I've never seen it in the Atlantic before. But yeah, that might be a possibility. Jose is going to actually help to pull Irma out to sea and away from us. All right. Anyway, let's go ahead and look at the NAM model now. Next. Well, we'll go to the Canadian. Let's go to the Canadian here. All right. Let's see what the Canadian does. This 12Z run from the Canadian here. Again, it seems like they all agree on this track offshore, and they all agree on the loop. And the Canadian kind of stalls it out. Well, the Canadian stalls it out a little bit, but not long enough. Yep, not long. And then oh man, and then it stalls Maria. It stalls Maria offshore. Oh man. All right, so that's the Canadian. The Canadian is not very reliable, so hopefully that won't be the case. That would be pretty bad. It stalls it. Looks around Bermuda. No, not around Bermuda, but it stalls it offshore. See, look at all these stalled storms. This is really strange stuff. That usually when a storm gets in this position, it usually rockets to the northeast. But that's not happening because the jet stream's all fucked up. All right, so let's go ahead and look at the NAM now. All right, the NAM. So let's see what the NAM does with Jose. So, see, the NAM has us getting into that rain. There was a wave of rain, but then that's it. And after that initial wave of rain, it kind of like the rain ends, and there's it seems like there's a lot of dry air being pulled in on the west side of the storm, and the NAM takes it further out. I think it takes it a little further out to sea, and again, it would be the Cape that would get the worst of this. So I think the Cape will get the worst of this, and then the NAM also has it doing that loop, and then here comes Maria. So That's the overview of the models today. So, yeah, very interesting times. But I can tell you, I've been somebody who's been following the weather since I was a teenager, and I've never seen the atmosphere behave like this ever. So, we are witnessing history, folks, and it's not a good thing because I do think, and that's my personal opinion. By the way, this was the 0Z run of the NAM. My personal opinion that we are doing something to the planet, and we need to wake up soon because we got to get our heads out of the sand because all the stuff that we're seeing in the atmosphere is not normal. All the strong hurricanes, the fact that they don't move fast, the jet stream. It's all in the jet stream, as Paul Beckwith said. It's all about the jet stream being screwed up. That's what's screwing everything else up, and the jet stream is screwed up because of the difference. The difference between the Arctic and the tropics has decreased because the Arctic has warmed so much. So it's created less of a. The jet stream is driven by the difference between the tropics and the Arctic, difference in temperature. When that difference decreases, the jet stream also decreases and gets wavy and diffuse, and that's why we're seeing all these weird patterns going on. And it really shouldn't take a rocket scientist to figure this stuff out. So, as far as Jose goes, don't freak out over it, all right? It's going to mostly be beach erosion. I don't think there'll be too much wind damage, maybe a few scattered power outages. But if you're on the east end, east of Riverhead, I would pay a little closer attention to it. You might see some more than that. Anyway, take care.